March 2026, Lost Hills, California. An AM/PM station off I-5, the kind of place you stop because there's nothing else for 40 miles. A woman named Heather Griffith pulls her Peterbilt 389 into the diesel lane. Blue truck, chrome stacks, the kind of rig that looks like it's been somewhere. She fills the tank, 100 gallons. The pump stops at $642. She doesn't flinch. She's done this before. 3, sometimes 4 times a week, depending on the loads. What she hasn't done before is the math she's doing in her head right now. Because a year ago, that same fill-up cost $400. Trucking has almost died before. In 2008, freight demand fell so fast that carriers couldn't park their trucks quickly enough. Fuel was over $4 then, too. Thousands of operators went under. The ones who survived tightened up, waited it out, and eventually the freight came back. In 2019, rates collapsed after the 18 boom. Same pattern: pain, then exit, then recovery. In 2023, Yellow Corp, one of the oldest names in American trucking, went down in a single weekend. 30,000 people lost their jobs. The industry absorbed the shock, reallocated the freight, and kept moving. Every one of those downturns had the same shape. Demand falls, weak operators exit, capacity tightens, rates recover. A cycle. Brutal but survivable because the fundamentals underneath didn't change. What's happening in 2026 is not a cycle. It's 3 things hitting the same industry at the same time. And it's the combination that makes this different from anything trucking has weathered before. The first is diesel. The war in Iran choked the Strait of Hormuz. A fifth of the world's oil moves through that water. And diesel blew past $5.40 a gallon in under a month. Trucking has survived expensive fuel before, but not on top of 3 years of poverty-level freight rates. The carriers who made it through 2023, 2024, and 2025 by running lean and burning savings, they have no cushion left. Diesel at $5.40 isn't a headwind, it's a wall. The second is tariffs. A 25% levy on imported medium and heavy-duty trucks. You might not feel that on a 5-year-old Freightliner that's already paid for, but the day you need to replace it, the sticker moved. Parts moved. The cost of staying in the game just got repriced. And for a small operator running equipment past its maintenance window, that math turns ugly fast. The third is the one that doesn't show up on a fuel receipt or an invoice. It shows up on a highway in Texas at 2 in the morning. Aurora has over 200 autonomous trucks planned on the road by year's end. 250,000 driverless miles already logged. 0 at-fault collisions. Kodiak is targeting long-haul driverless in the second half of this year. These aren't prototypes anymore. They're running freight. Commercially. Diesel is a cost problem. Tariffs are an equipment problem. Autonomous is an identity problem. It asks a question that no previous downturn ever asked. What if the jobs that leave this time don't come back? Any one of these, trucking survives. It always has. All 3 at once? That's not a cycle. That's a filter. Heather Griffith has been through the cycles. She drove through 2008 fuel spikes. She survived the rate collapse. She watched yellow disappear and picked up freight the next week. She will probably survive this too. She runs contract lanes with fuel surcharges. She owns her truck outright. She knows her cost per mile the way most people know their phone number. But Heather is not the norm. She's the exception, and she knows it. Most of the operators she started with are gone. Not because they were bad at driving, because they were undercapitalized for the length of this downturn, or over-leveraged on equipment they bought at the top. or running spot freight that no longer covers the fuel to haul it. The question isn't whether Heather makes it, it's who else does. The operators who survive this are not the biggest. They're the ones who know exactly 3 numbers: their cost per mile, their cash reserve in weeks, and the break-even fuel price on their worst lane. If you're running and you don't know those 3 numbers by heart, that's the first thing to fix. Not next quarter, now. Contract freight with fuel surcharges is the floor. Spot-only operators without cash reserves are the ones filing Chapter 11 right now. Not because the freight disappeared, but because the margin did. If you're on spot and you can't get to contract, reduce your operating radius until fuel cost per load makes sense again. Shorter lanes, tighter math. And if your equipment is aging past its maintenance window, this is the worst year in a decade to need a new truck. If you can keep what you're running safe and legal for another 12 months, the tariff picture may look different. Buying at the top of a cost spike is how the last round of bankruptcies started. Diesel will come down eventually. It always does. Tariffs get renegotiated. But the trucks with nobody in them, those aren't going away. The only question is, how many drivers are still in the game when the freight comes back? Drop your truck, your year, and your cost per mile. I want to see who's out here making it work.